Hey, Lisa, we're going to see you at the library board meeting.
Yes, I'll be there.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'll go.
Good.
Just for you.
Thank you.
I think I'm just looking for Commissioner Davis. Commissioner McKiernan had to send some last minute regrets, but as far as I know, Commissioner Davis is going to be with us, so we'll give him just another minute.
Yeah, he should be logging on now. He's having a little problem with his computer, but he's signing in right now.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm just crossing my fingers mine will work today.
Hi, Commissioner.
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon from here too.
This is Kathleen. Are you doing roll call? I just stepped away.
We haven't yet because Commissioner Davis is trying to get on,
Oh, good.
having
Okay.
technical difficulties.
How is everyone this morning or this afternoon? I mean,
I'm good. How are you?
good. So, earlier I mentioned that we may have to submit draft financial statements.
Yeah.
But the auditor is making it sound like, I think we really are working to, and I think we're going to be able to finish it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. So not draft, but final.
Yay.
Fingers crossed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, and this was did you say draft of something? What did you say?
I'm talking about the annual comprehensive financial report.
Oh, okay.
We used to call it CAFR. Yeah.
Okay.
Now it's ACFR. Yeah. But yeah, so it's officially due on July 28th by the bond documents, but we are able to submit like drafts to meet that requirement. But luckily, I think we're able to finalize it after all. So
Okay.
All right.
that has nothing to do with ARPA. By the way.
Just an excited announcement from your day, right?
Yeah.
We do have Commissioner Davis with us now. I will tell you, my little one is homesick today. So if I should suddenly disappear, it probably means something bad happened here. Somebody lost his lunch or something like that. So if I should suddenly disappear, somebody just pick up and carry on for a few minutes till I get back. Because we don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know. It looks like you're waltzing along the street in Italy to me.
I wish. He wishes too, I'm sure. Let's go ahead and get started with some roll call.
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Markley.
Here.
Commissioner McKiernan is absent. Commissioner Townsend.
Here.
Commissioner Bynum.
Here.
And Commissioner Davis.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll get started with an update on our applications and application process with probably Erica, I'm guessing, gonna lead that.
We have been very diligently pulling out the applications and processing through those and trying to assist those who have incomplete applications or ones that we need to make sure that we're defining all the pieces that they're needing within their application. We're working with those folks to do those very small tweaks before we do the final pull of all of the documents and making sure that we have all the necessary pieces to inform the commission, the subcommittee, what it would take to get these to go, and then of which ones you all would care to prioritize for funding. So, oops, there we go. We're going to go over the number of applications that we have right now, and then hopefully get into what our selection process is going to be. And then if there's any other set asides that we'd care to discuss, such as housing or others, we'll make sure to discuss that as well. So far, we've received 26 applications, which are proposing a total of 35 different projects. So that means that multiple applications have multiple projects. And currently, for those that we've defined, we have a little over $18 million in requests. And that number probably has increased by another 250,000 based on some of the clarifying points that we've gotten this week. And themes include recreation, healthcare, youth services, mental health, health and wellness, housing, banking, elderly assistance, childcare, education, workforce development, food insecurity, facilities remediation, infrastructure, and small business startup. And just as a percentage of the total projects put forward, this is how it breaks down based on those different subcategories. And we tried to keep it very broad so that we weren't necessarily creating any confusion or providing undue pressure on any of the specific applications that have been received, or any conflicts there, hopefully, within those requests so far. And then, as a general reminder, the things that we are able to fund under the ARPA eligibility are public sector revenues under the revenue replacement only, public health impacts, negatively impacted nonprofits and communities and industries, provided that they are serving those that are either in a qualified census tract or others who have had a disproportionate impact due to COVID. And then also premium pay for employees that are actively fighting COVID, and infrastructure. So in April, as an update for our timeline, in April, we opened up the nonprofit portal. We had the applications coming in through May. We've offered 3 different town halls at this point to discuss the application process, the portal, answer any questions that folks may have. And so we're pulling those applications as we go, and we're reviewing them for eligibility. And then once we get the project closed at the end of this week, we'll be able to finish processing those applications that have come in. We're expecting a whole bunch this week, especially from our internal partners. And we'll provide it to the subcommittee for review, and then the commission for final approval before we can provide awards. Now, as we've had to adjust our timeline a little bit, allowing for more time for applications to come in, it obviously has impacted the review timelines, and then when we'll be able to provide funding. So hopefully we'll be able to, within the conversation today, maybe define what our hopes are for some of those things, and then also what the most desirable process would be for that. Any questions thus far?
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Ms. Hupka again. A couple of slides back, there was a pie that you showed,
Yes.
color coded, that represented the different requests by type. If you divide that pie in half to the left side, it looks kind of brown. I saw 2 things. Oh, that was a green, education. So if I'm looking at this correctly, that biggest part, it looks like on the left-hand side, were requests for elderly assistance.
Yes, and that includes everything from housing to broadband access to meal service. So it's a very broad range of things that they're hoping to do for our elderly citizens.
Okay, so I see at about halfway point on the right side, lower, a lighter colored green, that's housing, but you're saying some of this brown also includes housing aspect.
Yes, so yes, that is correct.
Okay,
It's just more focused, more targeted on elderly as opposed to those with housing conflicts regardless of age or any other demographic information.
got it. So that, okay, these are all really age related then,
Mhm.
a variety of needs, but the predicate is based on age.
Yes,
And what is the final cutoff date for applications?
Friday,
Friday,
Friday.
which is, let me see, what is
The
that?
24th. June 24th at 5.
June 24th at 5. Okay, thank you.
Or I guess I should preface that on, is 5 o'clock an appropriate time to cut off, or do we want to leave it open till midnight?
It's
Oh, no.
Commissioner Bynum. If you think you can cut it at midnight, I think that would be great.
Okay, we can absolutely do that.
Yeah, and I agree, these are going through a portal. What's gonna happen between, 5 o'clock and 11:59? If people can get them in, I can respect that Cinderella deadline, that or nothing's gonna happen, so might as well.
All right, at 11:59, everything after that's a pumpkin.
Yeah,
All right.
Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for this information, Erica. Do we have an idea on the average allocation request, like ballpark of how much people are asking for?
I would say on average, most requests are between, I would say 100,000 and 500,000 on the high end for the average. However, we run the gamut of, I think, close to 10,000 all the way up to over 3 million.
Okay, gotcha. I remember you mentioning that 3.5 million requests. I didn't know
Yeah.
if anybody had asked anything a little bit more audacious.
Not yet.
Okay, gotcha.
But the majority of these are also nonprofits too. So we haven't received the internal UG department's request yet, for the most part.
So how many UG department requests do we have?
One.
Only one. Okay.
We have one applicant that's an internal department as of right now, but we have been having conversations with at least 6 different internal departments that I know are working on applications with multiple projects.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend?
thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Ms. Hufka, you mentioned earlier that you were going through some applications. Is that only if an applicant contacted you for assistance, or is this a screening you're doing on all of the applications?
This is the eligibility screen that we're doing on all applications. Of the 18 million, not all of those would be eligible expenses or eligible awards as they're currently written. The majority of applications, we will have to do some additional scrubbing on to make sure that they're eligible, make sure that we're crafting wording and making sure that we are doing the appropriate monitoring of the expenditures once they have been awarded. So making sure we're dotting all those I's and crossing the T's from the Treasury. But that work will happen after we do selection. Right now, what we're working on are those applications that they submitted. The primary issue right now is they have submitted their budget worksheet, but they didn't fill out worksheet 1. They just did the budget narrative on worksheet 2. So we're trying to get them to go back in and make sure that they've filled out everything on worksheet 1, just so we have a complete application to move forward with.
Okay, so would it be fair to say new computer and new visuals and new sound. So would it be fair to say that before any money is awarded or even the committee sees these, that people will know they at least qualify technically?
No,
Okay.
we have not done that work yet. And that would be at the, if that is what the committee would like for us to do, that outreach, we can certainly do that. But it's an investment probably in excess of 100 and between 100 and 150 hours from us to try to get that work done on the front end. What we would propose then is instead for you, for us to present those that have all of them that we've received, we've marked them as eligible or not eligible based on how they currently are. And then we've tried to estimate the number of hours that it would take for those that are eligible for us to get them polished and ready to go, so that the commission understands, excuse me, and the subcommittee understands whether or not what they're asking for in totality would be eligible if we crafted it, and what that additional investment would be on the part of the committee to have iParametrics work with them. Does that make sense?
Well, I wasn't trying to create more work necessarily. I was just trying to understand what you were already doing. And it just sounded to me as though when these applications come in, there's some at least cursory review, maybe more than cursory, to say, yes, this at least on its face appears to meet the criteria. That's all I'm asking. And will each application get that at least before it's presented to the committee?
We have not reported back for those that are ineligible as presented to those organizations. Is that a reach you guys would like for us to do?
Okay, well, what are you doing now? That's all I'm trying to clarify. What are you doing now?
Yes, we are determining whether or not they have, if they are eligible under the traditional framework. For those that were no, they would be eligible if revenue replacement dollars were suggested, but I know that we're trying to reserve those for grant funding going forward so we can multiply those dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, as the initial review, what we're doing is taking the application, reviewing all the projects for eligibility, and then calculating how much they're asking for and how many hours we think for those that have eligible portions, at least of their project, how long it would take for us to invest to get them to eligible based on what they've given us thus far. And we've calculated that as a table, and we have not done any communication outside of our very immediate review group, ARPA review group, on those metrics.
So just as you've described that process, is it your intention to go forward with all of them? Because I could imagine you might be deluged at the end, but do you intend to do that process for all of them?
Yes, so that we have
Okay.
a quality product to put forward to you guys for decision.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
That clarified it. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I do expect, because of the inability to save a draft application, that there will be a lot of them that come in at the very tail end. So I expect that number will go up significantly. I did see that there's someone as a panelist who has their hand raised. This meeting is not open for public comment, but if you do have a question that we can answer for you, you can send it, and somebody correct me if I have the email wrong, to arpa@wycokck.org. Is that right? I think that's the address. And we can handle those questions and get those answered for you. Any other questions for Erica before she moves ahead here? All right. Go ahead.
Okay. And so based on what we have just described with our process for screening eligibility of each of the applications and making sure that we're pulling out what each of the applications is asking for within their project, and then the cost that they're proposing with those. Right now we have it as a spreadsheet, and we can also pull out the entire application for the subcommittee to review. I was wondering how you would like for us to provide that material to you all for review. If you would prefer to have the spreadsheet and then all of the applications in packets, or how it may be best for you all to initially do your review of the applications that have been put forward, so we can have a discussion, so we can move forward with the selection process.
I think I like the way that we do it for the casino grant process, where we get like a summary spreadsheet, but then like out on the drive, we can access all of the full application information for each application. So we have like a summary list that tells sort of basic information about the organization, how much they want and what they want it for. And then the full application is also available to us for each Anybody else have thoughts on that? Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, and I think along with that, I know for infrastructure, we did a spreadsheet on kind of which projects we wanted to fund, just so that we can get a tally, because that's the other part with this being $6 million and a lot of projects. It would be good to kind of keep track of, if I say $100,000 for this application, what does that do to the bottom line? Something like that would be super helpful as well. I know it'd be on a larger scale, but I think it'd be helpful.
Okay, with the, excuse me for clarifying that one. With the tally piece, would you want us to determine based on where their area of impact is, whether or not it would come out of city or county funds, and then are we wanting a drawdown, or are we wanting to do the piece for voting which projects move forward with the infrastructure? Because I know there were a couple of spreadsheets out there.
Well, I think if we did kind of a tally, I'm really trying to track expenses, and then kind of like what we did with infrastructure, how many applications got that vote in a sense, or how many how many we selected, and then how much we said we want to allocate.
So I think
Okay,
Commissioner
so-
Davis is kind of trying to get kind of going one step further into how are we going to evaluate them as a group of commissioners, and is there a way for us to rank them in that Excel sheet that will give us that list?
Perfect. Yes, I can set that up.
My apologies. Yes, that's where my mind was, but yes, that's where I was.
Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you. I was just going to say, I agree with your suggestion, Madam Chairman, about the formatting and the analysis to the casino grant applications, and also to Commissioner Davis's, what I call the king and queen of the world sheet that we did. It was easy to see and make a comparison in terms of who the requester was, a thumbnail of the project, and the amount requested. So I like those ideas.
Okay.
Great. Any other thoughts on that? If not, we'll move right along.
Okay. And then I think one of the other things we sort of touched on it here was the selection criteria for this. We will use that same voting template that we use from infrastructure, and then move forward from there based on the presentation. Which the only other piece that I think we needed to discuss for our edification is if we wanted to have specific categories that again had set aside, much like we did for infrastructure, with housing or some of the other pieces that I know are very key to our constituents. And I didn't know if there were any other set asides that we wanted to address or make sure that we were highlighting or focusing within that voting document.
Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make the process too complicated, but I do think that alignment with community survey results, maybe on a very, very broad scale, would be good. I know that, we're not necessarily talking about infrastructure projects per se, but we are talking about housing, maybe there'll be some childcare, elderly care, and what have you. So it'd be interesting to kind of take those community survey results and their rankings and then correspond that with our decisions, if that's possible.
Sure.
Warms my heart to hear you say that.
Yeah, I agree that I think that would be helpful. Commissioner Bynum, Commissioner Townsend, any thoughts on that? All right.
That was what the analysis to the survey.
Yep, or just anything else that you would like to see sort of tractor added into that pre-analysis.
You know, I can't think of anything that I haven't heard already. Sometimes, you know, that doesn't become apparent until you actually see what you've got. So not to further complicate anything, I'm okay with what I've heard, you know, thus far, so.
This is Commissioner Bynum, I would agree, as long as we're filtering for eligible, if that makes sense. I mean, if we put it as a comparison to our community survey, there are a lot of needs and wants within the survey that I think you can't use ARPA dollars for. So I don't know what that looks like, but in general, I do agree.
Well, now that, Madam Chair, that does raise a question. Are we going to see in all of this every application or only those that were eligible?
We
Or
currently
just
have it-
as they sort out with, say, the casino grant, if you are not a 501c3, then that's one of the basic criteria, and we won't see that in the applications that are forwarded on to us. So just so I'm clear, and maybe someone else, what we will see will be only those applications that are deemed eligible. Is that correct?
We currently have both the eligible and the ineligible on the same sheet so that you can see where all of the applications came from. And if there was a particular application that we wanted to ensure was funded that didn't meet criteria or that we couldn't get to yes, that we were able to have a visual of that and then figure out how we could get that funded elsewise. We didn't want to necessarily limit the information you were receiving, but we wanted to make sure you knew going into it that that would not necessarily be an eligible expense based on our criteria.
Okay,
think
well, I
the
appreciate that.
The complicating factor here, I think, is that even if it's ineligible, it's eligible for revenue replacement. Should we decide to make that recommendation, and maybe we could get separate tabs in that Excel sheet, one that's the things that are eligible for the more strictly ARPA funding, and then a tab of those things that are ineligible for ARPA funding. But if we chose to take it, you know, for additional budget discussion for revenue replacement, then that would fall under that tab.
I think that's a good idea. It promotes transparency and an additional accounting, so to speak, of who applied and who didn't. So I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and if I can add, I absolutely, I think if we could really just target on this particular fund and getting this behind us before tackling revenue replacement, that would be my preference, because I know it's been a long time coming to get to this point. And so I'd like to kind of focus in as much as we can. Yes, capture the other ineligible applications on another tab, but I really, really would hope that we can knock this out first and then jump, you know, to the other things.
And off the top of my head, one of the ineligible requests right now may have a different vehicle that we could fund that through. So it isn't ARPA eligible, but there are other grants that are coming out that we may be able to put that forward with, or as a part of a project with other grant applications if we're awarded.
Okay, other comments on that? What's next, Erica?
I believe that that's it for our portion of the presentation. I think that with our next steps, we've outlined that the iParametrics team is going to continue to comb through those applications as they are received, and then we're going to create the casino and infrastructure like spreadsheets and get the folder established within the subcommittee on their team site so that you all have access not only to the quick sheets through the Excel, but also for the full applications if you would care to do a deeper dive into what exactly it is that they're asking for with each of the projects. And again, I wanted to make sure as we're doing this, you will see some applications will have multiple projects. The intent of the multiple projects is to allow you to independently review and approve the specific projects as put forward. So it's not an all or nothing for an applicant, it's an all or nothing for the project potentially. Or if we'd care to fund a portion of any application, we also reserve the right to do that. So if we run out of funds, but we want to provide partial funding to specific things, we can also have that as well.
All right, last call. Any questions for Erica? Is everybody getting feedback or just me?
I think it's gone now.
I hope so. I don't need to hear myself twice. All right, thanks so much. So the next topic in our agenda is housing funding again, and committee members, you may remember we had some discussion about this as we were deciding how much money to put into the grant application pot, so to speak. We had discussion about whether to set aside funds for a housing specific project yet to be determined. And at that time, we chose not to do so, and we sort of put the money in the grant pot as a whole. So for two reasons, I'm bringing this forward again. First is that Kathleen brought forward information during our last session about additional revenue replacement funds that came as a result of finalizing the, I'm going to say it wrong, finalizing the financial statements. She'll correct me and say, no, that's not an Angela, but something about finalizing something that happened in prediction. So we have those additional funds that are revenue replacement. So this would be a discussion we would probably need to have with the fuller commission, depending what comes out of this committee. The second reason is that several of us have had contact or conversations with the Churches United group, which has a specific proposal that they've been putting forward related to housing. That hasn't necessarily been vetted on our staff side yet, but I wanted to bring it up for discussion because I know a number of commissioners have had those discussions, whether it makes sense for us to, again, look at putting aside a specific piece of funding for a housing related program. We know it was a high priority in the community survey, high priority in the workshops for our ARPA expenditures. I'll just open it up for discussion based on those ideas. Commissioner Davis?
And thank you. Kathleen, can you provide just a brief update on what do we now have available in revenue replacement dollars?
Commissioner Davis, can you repeat your question? I'm so sorry. We were working on the audit.
No, you're good. You're good. Can you provide just an update on what the available funding is for revenue replacement dollars for the city and for the county?
You mean how much money is left in the respective operating fund or the city and the county general funds?
Yes, for revenue replacement. Yes.
Well, at the moment, it's roughly about $1 million on the county side and about $6 million on the city side. Yeah.
Okay. Now, is that after the new revelation that we found on the new money that we found for revenue replacement?
Okay, there's yeah. You mean after the recent revision of the estimates? Yes, yes it is. Yeah.
So $1 million for the county and then $6 million for the city.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, and of course that assumes that we end the year at the same percentage of expenditures as a reserve as we did when we ended fiscal 19 before the pandemic. So, so it kind of depends on the budget process. So as you spend down the money, then there's less to spend naturally. That's how it works basically. So my suggestion though, with this $6 million, for example, on the city side is that if you're going to spend it, you spend it on one-time things, not ongoing items. Okay, that's all. Sorry, I'm going to mute again.
That is a good point that I didn't make it. All of these funds are one-time funds. So just something for, again, we haven't settled on what we would do with a housing pot of money if we had one, but it's just important for us to keep in mind that it's not an ongoing funding stream. Not without some supplement anyway. Other thoughts, questions?
Right. So well, yeah, I'm sorry if I missed it, but if you were talking about a housing trust. So yeah, my only concern about that trust, and I haven't read through I'm told that there are other cities that have adopted a trust using ARPA funds. So I'd really need to look through that to see, because to me, it seems like if you build a trust, you want to keep it in place for a long time. So, past the 2024, 25 or 6, end date, because that's when the feds require us to spend it down. So it just intuitively doesn't seem to make sense to me, but maybe there is some way of doing it, that other cities have found that, so that, I don't know. And so, we just need a little bit more research is what I'm saying. Yeah. Because of course,
Thanks.
we don't want to spend any funds if we end up having to return them to the feds because we didn't meet all the guidelines. So.
If I may, Kathleen, so I'm looking at our last meeting earlier this month, and it said that there was $13.8 million in unallocated funds on the city side, and then $2.6 million unallocated on the county side. And then there was also that reimbursement that we were waiting on from FEMA. So that's different than the $6 million for city, $1 million for county that you just said. So I'm just trying to reconcile those two.
Well, so Commissioner, you asked me, well, how much money is left over in revenue replacement, right? Okay. That's what you asked me, right? That the 6 and the 1 million, that's revenue replacement. That's cash sitting over in the city and the county general fund. Okay. And what you're looking at right now, the 13 and the 2 million, that's ARPA that has not been allocated yet, that all of you are talking about. So not one is not part of the other. You need to add the two numbers together. Okay.
Gotcha.
The one that's sitting over in the general funds, the city and county, you can spend it on anything that's called government services, right? And the ones that you all are looking at, it has to meet all those expenditure category eligible uses that we keep bringing up. So it has tighter restrictions, and it's sitting over in a special grants fund. It's the special grants fund 269. Whereas the revenue replacement money is sitting over in 1110 and 160.
No, I see.
Number.
So we have revenue replacement and we have the unallocated ARPA dollars. My last question is the housing trust is a eligible use for ARPA dollars, meaning we wouldn't even have to touch revenue replacement. We can just look at these unallocated ARPA dollars and do something with them. Is that correct?
Well, so that's why I wasn't certain whether it is eligible, because, what you have to spend these monies before or obligate it by 2024. So to me, to create a trust, you're wanting to establish something that's longer term than 2 years. So, so that's all I'm just saying. But, then I was also told by those advocates that other cities are doing it. So I just need to research, find out whether that's the case and how did they and so forth. So, yeah. And I think that Erica and her team are also looking into that question too.
A couple of things. Commissioner Davis, I think we could use ARPA specific funds, assuming that it's eligible in terms of turn length, but then we'd have to kind of claw back some of those funds we put into the grant pool, right? Because we kind of put everything that was left into the grant pool on the ARPA side. So that's why I was like, well, maybe the revenue replacement is our opportunity. And then Kathleen, yeah, we did say, I know you're kind of doing two things at once back there, and we totally understand. That's why I want to kind of keep our conversation more general today in terms of the housing options available to us, because I know staff hasn't had an opportunity yet to sort of look at in more detail at what a housing trust would look like and what that specific proposal might look like. So fine for us to discuss it, just with the knowledge that staff hasn't had an opportunity to really vet that and dig in and see what is possible. Commissioner Bynum?
Well, thanks. I'm listening and pondering. I was unable to attend the Churches United event. I believe that Commissioner Townsend and Davis did. And so, they may have more insight than I do. I'm interested in the mechanics of whether the trust fund is something that we can do. I'm definitely interested in supporting it. The second request from the church gathering was a crime reduction initiative through our PD. And it had a price tag as well. And I want to say that was around 300,000, not sure. I would be curious if that were eligible through ARPA. It seems to show real promise in the communities that are utilizing the approach. So I guess I just want to say that I really want to express support for the two concepts. For sure, a deeper dive into where the funding could come from. And I am interested in this notion of the longevity, if you will, of the spin down of ARPA. And then with what would you replenish it once you created it? My last comment / question is, I am curious for us to be able to see, I mean, as far as I know, again, Commissioner Davis and Townsend were there, I was not. What are the parameters of a trust fund? Like, I'm guessing that's work yet to be done. What causes an expenditure out of a housing trust fund? And then we have, per Erica and the pie chart, we have housing requests now in the grant pipeline. So I'm just kind of hoping that this will all come together for me better than it is right now. Erica says she has an answer, so I will stop talking.
Go ahead, Erica.
Thank you, commissioners. A trust would have to be funded under revenue replacement funds because it cannot extend beyond 2026. So if a trust was established, it would have to be using those same funds, the revenue replacement one.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the lawyer in me is going to come out right now. Just for the record, I was not present when during the presentation at Mount Carmel, the housing aspect was discussed. I have asked and was told I will receive a copy of the entire, for lack of a better word, service that night. And so I will be happy to share that with the committee and staff so everybody can have advantage of hearing what was said. So I have yet to get that. And this does raise some questions, some of which we've addressed already, I guess, when we talked earlier about having in the presentation, once the application cutoff materializes, all of the applications, whether they may meet ARPA or not. So that's good. The time limitation aspect is very important because we want to have programs that, in my opinion, can exhaust their funding if awarded within the time frame. The absolute worst thing in the world is have money lying around that will have to go back by law to the federal government. We don't want that to happen. So saying that, I would encourage any organization who's looking at any of these funds, revenue replacement funded or ARPA funded, to put in an application. I think that'll be easier from defining what the ask is and being able to follow it. The other aspect is with the revenue replacement, it sounds as though from our CEO, there is more latitude there in the way that that money can be spent. So administration of how any of these dollars, particularly if you're talking about a trust, will be handled is I think, a major consideration. Who is going to do that? I mean, is this supposed to be done by an organization outside of the UG? The UG is just the conduit for getting money to the organization? Or is the expectation that the UG will monitor and oversee this? So that, again, I think is a good reason for any organization to put in an application so we can kind of monitor it. The parameters are better defined so everybody can see and understand what's being asked. So those are my comments for right now.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I was there for the home meeting and endorsed the idea for group violence intervention and also for the housing trust. I want to make it very clear for the record. When they asked the question of whether or not I endorsed it, the question said a significant amount. It did not outline what that is. Later on in the presentation, there was the request for $10 million, but I want to put on the record that was not what I said yes to. I said yes to the housing. I said yes to the Housing Equity and Trust Fund and endorsing the concept of a significant amount of money, leaving that open. And I've had conversation with Amber and other folks from that camp. Now, to Commissioner Bynum's point, and I think to everyone's point, there's a lot of details that need to be refined for us to really get there and get at a yes or no. I absolutely agree with that. However, I do think we should think about the opportunity that is before us. We have, the land bank policy review, right, discussion group that's going to kind of take off. That could play a role here. We do have this money that is one time, but it's still here. And it was said in the Economic Development Standing Committee that there was a particular project that the pilot payments that's generated from that project would not just go into the general fund, but would be used for some sort of housing related or community land trust. And that's a really Catherine Carter, right, thing. Point being that those pilot payments could be the ongoing revenue that we use for this Housing and Equity Trust Fund. And we could allocate some sort of money from revenue replacement to get it started, and then use the ongoing revenue from that particular project and hopefully others to continuously fund that particular project. Now, there's still more details on administration, and I think that's going to be the tasker for Churches United for Justice. But I do think we have some tools to make all of this work.
Thanks, Commissioner. So what I feel like I'm hearing, or maybe what I'm not hearing is anybody saying, no, I don't want to consider this at all. What I think I hear is that there's an appetite on this committee for staff to do some additional research, staff and pseudo staff, Erica and her team, to do some additional research to figure out what trust might look like, or if there's some concept that makes more sense or better fits our need or the abilities of these funds, to see what's out there in terms of what other cities are doing and what we could potentially do with our funds in terms of funding a housing project or fund. That's what I think I'm hearing. If anybody speak now or Herbert, hold your peace if you disagree, but I think we're gonna really get done early if we can get to it this quick. But what I really think is it sounds like we need to give some marching orders for staff to help us out in figuring out, are these other cities doing this? Can they do this? Can we do it too? What would we have to do to be able to do this? And what might it look like for us to set up some structure similar to what's being proposed?
Yeah, so of course, we can we can, from a financial and administrative standpoint, I'm able to work with the commission to get the legal documents created to create a trust. And of course, administratively, we would have the capabilities of overseeing the trust. If I'm just, if we're not using ARPA dollars, then we'd have to use dollars out of our general fund, right? So, but I'm not sure. I just need to understand better what it is, because why are we creating a trust? And is there a revolving loan function to this? Because that's where my concern, actually, from a CFO perspective. My duty is to diminish the risk to our taxpayers. So the unified government shouldn't be acting as in the function as if we were a bank, because we are public servants. We manage taxpayer dollars. Our skill set is not with assessing risk of people and whether they're able to repay loans or not. So I don't know. I'm not sure I have the capability to do that part. So I need to learn more about it. So I don't mean to get off on the tangent here. I'm not opposed to it. It's just if we don't have that capacity, we would have to build it. And so there's a lot of questions involved, but ultimately I'm responsible for making sure that taxpayer dollars are properly administered and in a safe fashion. So just
Great. I think everybody is recognizing that there are all these questions still to be answered. What we're hoping that you and Gwen and Erica can kind of pull together is those example cities that this group has cited. Kind of what are they doing, and are they properly making it work? How are they properly making it work? And kind of vetting out the concept so that we can say, yes, we want to explore it more deeply for us, or no, we don't like what they're doing and we don't think it can work for us, is I think where we want to go. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, and again, I think this is still in its infancy. I mean, this is not in any way, and I've expressed this to the group even with my endorsement, that there's still a lot of questions. We are by no means at the finish line, but I do think that we are inching towards something that could be rather revolutionary for how we do housing in Wyandotte County, what we do with all of these parcels. It might be good for there to be a list of questions and things for staff to kind of send to this group and for staff to explore to figure out what it looks like. I know from a capacity standpoint, we may not have someone that can do that, but this may be a partnership with someone who does have the capacity. And maybe we're just kind of, overseeing that process. So I still think that's kind of further down the line, but I do think we need to do something about housing. we need a ongoing solution, and this might be it if we can figure it out. Thank you.
So, gosh, we all have a little bit of, meaning those of us in accounting and economic development have a little bit of baggage because with revolving loan programs, because there was a revolving loan program for businesses set up like 10 years ago, and we're still dealing with the accounting and the problems with that because we don't have the means to get people to repay. And so there are constantly, and it was partly funded by the federal government too. So it's a completely different program, and it touches different clients. I got it. But I'm just telling you that there's that. And by the way, we outsourced it as well. So we're still having problems with that idea. And that's why some of us have some, concerns about another revolving loan program.
And I think that's fine. I mean, I think that's the feedback that we need, but we just need sort of a more formalized, like, we looked at everything. This is how other cities are doing it. These are the risks associated with that. These are the things that are good about it. These are the things that are bad about it, so that we can take that into consideration and decide what the next steps are. Commissioner Bynum?
Thanks. I am just making myself available to this group and Kathleen and her team, as well as the Churches United team, to be a member of some separate subcommittee that continues to work on all of what we've stated so far today. So I feel like that's work that's going to be done in a separate way. And I am volunteering myself to be a member of a separate group that trudges through all of the minutia that could come with such a trust. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, just for clarity, I know there's some worry, Kathleen, on the loan side, but just doing some quick research, it doesn't have to be loans. These could also be grants. So that's the other part of it that, you know, we may also want to consider. Again, we still need to get more, but just to kind of provide a little bit more.
So you would be just granting out the amount that the corpus earns in interest? Is that the thought?
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be kind of micro grants to kind of close that cost to build and then sell at an affordable rate. So I don't want to get into too much of the details. Obviously, I'll throw my hat in with Commissioner Bynum, but there's a lot of options.
Yeah, and I think that's what's important here. And the reason I didn't want to maybe spend a whole hour talking about the proposal that we have, because I knew staff hadn't vetted that proposal and probably had some questions about how that would work. I mean, I think, you know, if we were to talk to Catherine in economic development, she might come forward and say, you know, what we really need is X. And that might take us in a totally different direction. So I think what I wanted to get out of this meeting is what I think we're getting, which is that there does seem to be some interest in doing some background work to figure out what might make sense for us to pursue. And I think we can come out of this meeting and figure out how that background work is going to happen. And Kathleen and I can get together and see who's working on what and how that makes sense. And we can regroup in a future meeting and discuss what our options might be.
Well, hey, and just so you know, at the beginning of every year, I have to do a presentation to the credit rating agencies. And one of the things we do is we talk about all the economic development that's going on. And so I'm just telling you that right now, at least at the beginning of the year, we came up with, there are 11 projects underway. Most of them, like 8 or maybe even 7 are residential. And they're adding, all these projects are adding 1,300 apartment units. I mean, it's tremendous how many how much residential development's going on. And that was in February. So, housing is coming. I'm just saying, no, I don't know. Now that is market rate. I grant it. So, but I'm just saying that the private sector is reacting to the need, is my point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Townsend.
Well, I agree with you, Madam Chair, and with my other colleagues about, and I think I've stated this earlier, about moving forward, having staff move forward to find out what was done in other cities with proposals similar to this. But the reason I raised my hand, I'm not sure that the developments that our CFO just mentioned are occurring or will occur east of 635, which again is the primary target area for this. As a commissioner, I'm happy when we have development like that in the county, but again, specifically this ask from the Churches United, correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Davis, like I said, I haven't seen the tape and I was not there for the housing portion, but there is a target area here. So, and I have not heard of anything as a member of the Economic Development Committee that talks about any, large developments east of 635 too. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Okay, so that's a really fair point. I'm just going to walk through it. Okay, so the Legends Apartments, certainly that's true. That's out west. And the Village West Apartments, Phase 3, that's out west. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's nothing east of 635.
Yeah. So that's
and that's the focus of this application. So But
Yeah.
again, I agree with the comments made by the chair. That I'd like to see staff move forward with looking at other similar requests and how these things were maneuvered. The other thing that has to be answered for me, is this a short time or is this a long time? The trust can be set up, would end in a relatively short time as the money expires. So I'm looking to hear more about the specifics. And when I get the tape, I'll be happy to share it also, the tape from the entire meeting. That may
That'd
give
be
another
helpful.
perspective as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can add, Commissioner Townsend, to answer your question. So from what I remember in the presentation, the Housing and Equity Trust Fund would be geared towards formerly redlined areas. And I know that there's some legalities and things that we really need to work out to see if that is something that we can actually do. But to your point, we need to be very, very targeted. And in my opinion, we do need to put the bulk of this funding and the bulk of this program in the Northeast. I mean, it needs to be east of 635 so that we're able to increase the housing stock. And yes, I think we could probably leverage these new economic development projects in their pilot payments. Instead of throwing them in the general fund, we can use that funding to fund some of these, to fund the trust fund. So there are options there, but I did want to provide clarity on east of 635 was censored, formerly redlined areas.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Kathleen, I will volunteer Commissioner Bynum and I, at least initially, if you want to set up some time with us to talk about what this research effort might look like and how or to what extent you want either of us to be involved, or what specifically this group is going to be looking for in terms of output. Or I think Gwendolyn's on here somewhere. I think she can send me an invite, whatever. We'll kind of get together behind the scenes and figure out what maybe the next steps are for figuring out how to bring back information to this group for some analysis. And that, I think, will be our action item, is to just figure out what other cities might be doing and what that looks like, and whether there are other options we want to consider here that maybe we haven't heard about other cities doing. And we can talk about that at our next meeting and do a little bit of follow-up. Yeah, anything else on that topic? All right, so that's one big action item. Our next meeting, I think, is July 8th, is that right? So we should know how many applications we have at that point, and may or may not be at a point of looking at that spreadsheet, but at least we'll probably be at a point of sort of assigning some marching orders as to what this committee is going to be doing individually to rank those, and preparing to come back with our king or queen of the world recommendations so that we can hash out which applications will be funded. So it should be a big meeting for us, and the culmination of a lot of effort by this committee and by staff and by those who have applied. So I'm looking forward to that and excited to start that process. Are there other topics that any of you would like to see on our next agenda, or that you would like to have addressed? You can always obviously email those to me, but since we're getting done just a little bit early, I thought I'd throw it out there in case somebody wants to toss something out right now. Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Yeah, if we can have an update on the small business grant as well, I think that would be good. If I'm not mistaken, the 24th is also the deadline for small businesses to apply. Is that also correct? Okay, I see a lot of people shaking their heads. So just for the community, I mean, those are two pretty significant funds that we are now closing. And so if we can get an update on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, if I remember offhand, it's probably wrong, but I think there was like 100,000 left to allocate as of the end of as of March 31st. So we reopened it to get more applications, and my guess is that all the money is going to get spent. So.
All right, anything else? if not, I will release you all, and we're done early today, which I'm happy to give you back a little piece of your day.
Well, I'm really excited to see the applications. I know all of you are. So that'll be a big meeting for all of us, I think.
Yeah, Eric, I just noted in the chat for me to make a general announcement, we do need a few more small businesses to apply for that small business grant. So
all
if
right.
you have interest, please reach out. All right. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.